On this episode, Golden and I give you our spoiler-free thoughts on Alita Battle Angel. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam, episode 33. I'm your host, Orren Merton. And pardon my sniffles. Yes, it's getting cold here in Southern California, or at least wet and chilly. And that means that the majority of us have some kind of head cold going on. So we'll power through it anyway. Now, our local home theater here in Southern California had a special screening of Alita Battle Angel before it opens on Friday. And it was kind of a special event and things. And we managed to snag tickets. So Golden and I, we went, we saw, and we immediately ran home to share our thoughts on a podcast. Pardon the sound if it isn't quite pristine. We weren't sitting in a studio environment. We just sort of sat right down to start talking. But I think you'll like what we have to say, and here we go. I am here with Golden, and we have just seen the Experience Alita Battle Angel 3D Dolby Cinema special preview.
Real 3D.
Oh, is that what it is? Real 3D?
Real 3D.
Real 3D. As opposed to the fake 3D in the other theaters, we got the real 3D. So this was a special screening that is before the movie is supposed to open on Friday that they're doing in select theaters. So ours wasn't the only theater. And we figured it was worth talking about now, even though we're both kind of getting over head colds. We wanted to talk about it while it's fresh. And because the movie isn't out yet, we are going to be spoiler-free, so you don't have to worry.
I think it actually set to open on Thursday, not Friday.
That's true. I think we've reached...
February 14th.
Yeah, we've reached the point where I think every movie now just officially opens the night before the Friday opening. They just keep moving it earlier and earlier and earlier. This is a movie that has been getting a fair amount of hype. And you were pretty hyped about it, weren't you?
I was hyped about it, and then I read some reviews and was like, I'm really hoping that's better than the reviews. Because the reviews were kind of like, yeah, it was nice to see. But I was really hoping it was going to be more than that.
I think when you first told me about the reviews, it was at about 50% Rotten Tomatoes.
No, actually, I think it was less than that.
Oh, even less than 50.
I think it was at 37 at one point.
37.
I don't remember exactly.
That's like Justice League low. But I remember telling you, I was like, well, it's early days. There are probably still not a ton of reviewers who have seen it yet. So maybe as it gets closer, it'll get higher. And when we walked into the theater, it was actually up to 60% from the critics, which is rated fresh. So it went from rotten to fresh in the weeks leading up to the screening.
Yeah, it's at 60% right now.
Okay, so do you agree with the critics? Is it fresh?
Oh, I think it's definitely fresh. I don't think it's as low as 60%. I actually think that it's better than that.
Like you were hyped about it. You really wanted to see it. I didn't know the manga that it was based on.
I don't know the manga either.
Okay. I was not... I mean, I knew it was James Cameron, and he's generally a mark of quality, but I wasn't all that excited. The character of Alita, when I saw her in the trailers, always kind of looked like she was in that uncanny valley. I mean, she didn't quite look... She looked human, but not quite human, and so I was always a little hesitant. But because you were that enthused, it kind of got me enthused.
Well, it just looked really cool.
The action scenes certainly looked really cool. So I didn't walk in with big expectations, but after seeing the movie, I was really impressed. I mean, there was a real story there, and a moving story there.
And the critics that reviewed it didn't seem to think there was much of a story there, and I think that there was a lot more there than they gave it credit for. I mean, the different characters definitely grow. And you see them growing. And it's not just Alita. You see Orren grow, Yugo grow, you see Alita grow. I mean, you see everyone around her grow.
But it's true. Everyone has a little bit of an arc, at least. Alita has a pretty major arc. When she shows up, she has no idea who she is. And it really is kind of the coming-of-age story. And I think we have to give James Cameron a lot of credit here because he has a career of creating strong female characters.
Which we were reminded of in the... So part of the experience was after the movie, there was a Q&A with several members of the cast. And so they were there with the director, producer, James Cameron. And so people asked questions and they answered the questions on the big screen. So different people that were going to the different experience showings.
Right.
From around the world, kind of.
I believe when you bought the ticket to the special program, they gave you like a hashtag or something, and so you could go on their Facebook page or Twitter or whatever and ask a question. So all these people, they would say, and this one is from someone who is seeing the show tonight at...
In London, in Orlando. I think one of them was Arizona. Can't remember some of the others.
There were some Italy.
Italy.
Yeah, one was in Italy. So they were certainly doing screenings all around the world. And it's fun. It was a fun experience. You know, there were no trailers. You didn't have to see 30 minutes of trailers before the film. We got right into the movie. And to get back into the movie, I think that it really had a good story. Now, I don't think this was one of these like stories for the ages or anything. As I mentioned before, there were elements of it that you would find in other stories. You know, of course, there has to be the teenage love story, and you know, it wasn't peripheral, but it also wasn't. It didn't move my soul.
Which I think that you had a problem with it being. You felt that like the love story was contrived.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was that necessarily contrived.
Okay.
It was just. Here's, you know, a naive girl.
Right.
And this is the first nice person.
The first nice boy.
The first nice boy.
That's right. So, you know, I could have lived without that. Plus the whole idea, and again, I'm not familiar with the manga, so I don't want to, you know, say this is a horrible film cliche. This may be very true to the manga, but... We've seen from the 70s rollerball on up this, you know, dystopia where there's a game, a brutal game that gets the people excited. And I mean, that aspect of it is not exactly novel.
If you hold the audience, you hold the people.
Right, you control
hold the power.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Oh, no, the reason for it is absolutely legit. I mean, in context, in world... but I can see why if you were a critic, you'd be like, oh, another one of these. You know, it just wouldn't be like something really innovative. But that said, I don't want to make it sound like I'm bashing the story.
I think it was
there was more than I wanted.
But instead of
I thought there would be.
Instead of it being about the rollerball, it moved the story.
Right. No, I agree. And it was integrated into the story, I think, really well because it wasn't like... You know, and other things where it's like the entire movie is just an excuse to show the sport being played. There was a movie, and it wasn't just the sport. But the sport itself wasn't just an excuse to take a movie that otherwise would have been boring and add action. It was integrated really well, and better than I thought it would be. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to the writing. And the actors were really good. I love Jennifer Connelly, but I felt she was a little flat. Maybe that was what the director wanted of her character. I felt it was a little flat.
Well, I think that she was just kind of trapped. Her character was kind of trapped in, and I think that that
played out.
Played out.
Yeah.
In it.
Okay. I can see that. I think the actress, Rosa Salazar, who played Alita, I'd never heard of this actress before, but she is quite good. And it is a motion capture character.
No, not just necessarily motion capture. They talked about this.
Performance
capture.
That's right.
And she said that there were different people playing for the motion. It was her, and then there was another person that took it to the next level, another person that took it to even the next level.
Right.
Because they all had to have a certain amount of training to capture this style of fighting, this zero gravity style of fighting that was brought about in the manga.
Absolutely.
And now they have to figure out how they're going to portray that, something that doesn't actually exist in this movie. And I really like how they were talking about yes, of course, a lot of this is not real. But they wanted to make sure that you believe it.
Right.
That you feel it, and that it doesn't pull you out of the movie.
Right.
And I don't think there was anything that really pulled me out of the movie.
I would agree. And for those of you who are familiar with anime, which is kind of the cartoon visual version of manga, you know that often what they'll do in these fights is they will have the character like hit their massive action pose and just freeze it. And it'll just be like this special effect thing of the character jumping at you going, ah! And it's very visual, and it can be very kinetic, but it also is completely unreal. But I think
they kind of did that a little bit.
I was going to say, the way they integrated that into a live-action movie, I think was really brilliant. Because you got that sort of live-action anime aspect, but it didn't pull you out of the film, and that's a feat right there.
And for those of you that might be pulled out of this conversation right now by the groaning or moaning that is occurring in the background, that is Orren having to pet the dog. Because if he stops petting the dog will start being like, no, you stopped! You can't stop! You need to keep petting me!
Like I said, this conversation is happening the moment we got home from the film. And speaking of the visuals, I really have to give a shout out to the production design, the special effects, all of that. It was gritty. It was lived in. It looked like a real city. They dropped you in the middle. It wasn't like this is a shiny new world and now let's explain it.
And they talked they talked a little bit about that during the Q&A, and they even brought the creator to the set.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just wow, because he got to see his manga, his artwork basically come to life and be in his own creation.
Yeah. And they really did an amazing job with it. And it makes everything feel much deeper. Speaking of depth, we did get the 3D, as Golden told us, the real 3D.
We got seriously real 3D. Like, we could reach out and touch Alita. And I say this because when we walked into the theater, they gave us these little Pop Alita
we got
keychains.
The Funko Pop Alita keychain, which was really cool. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But, I also have to say, now I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of 3D. If you go to the site where I write posts every now and again, you'll see that I wrote a post about how the 3D in Into the Spider-Verse was absolutely game-changing, amazing. The 3D in Alita was fine.
It was fine.
It was fine.
No, okay, so talk about 3D. You say, you get vertigo. You don't appreciate heights. When Assassin's Creed came out, AMC did this whole thing with the what's the headgear immersive.
Oh, the
3D
VR.
VR, the VR system, and you could go and you could put the helmet on and go actually through part of the Assassin's Creed. Actually into the preview. And I remember
fun.
With that, I looked down and the floor wasn't there, and I got a little bit of vertigo. And it was really interesting to me because in one scene, a couple of the characters are high up walking along an edge. Mm-hmm. And I actually experienced some vertigo.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, really close to the edge, getting a little queasy. And it was just kind of interesting that I would experience it.
Yeah.
Just through the 3D.
And along those lines, I think that's where the 3D was good, in that it did add a nice depth to some scenes. There was a scene where they're running up a pipeline, and it looked like one character's in the distance running towards one in the foreground. And, I think that was good. But whenever they tried to have a character, lunging at you and things like that.
No,
The
I
more
don't really,
gimmicky 3D.
Yeah, I don't think there was really that
There
much
was
of that.
some of that with Alita and some of the like things that the bounty hunters would have, their little weapons and stuff. You know, I could take it or leave it. The fact that you don't even remember it is a sign of just how memorable it was.
No, in terms of I don't remember it being gimmicky.
Yeah.
So.
Let's put it this way. I think what we're trying to say is if your option to see it is in 2D, don't worry, you're not missing anything.
Unless you're a really big fan of 3D and you just have to see everything in 3D.
Right. If you love 3D, this will not take you out of it.
I don't think it's going to be disappointed. You're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah. But it's not that you need to see it in 3D or you're missing something. I thought the music was really good. The soundtrack was great. I was pleasantly... I don't want to say it sounded familiar, but I really just liked the way it fit. And then I saw that it was done by one of my favorite soundtrack artists, Junkie XL. Tom, and I can't pronounce his last name because it's Dutch. But he goes by Junkie XL, and that's how I know him.
Not that you can pronounce.
Right, that I can pronounce. And he does a great job with the soundtrack. Really, I mean, this is just a very quality film.
I thought it was. I was really, leaving the theater, I asked you who played Nova, because I thought it was Edward Norton.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see his name in the credits. And you said, no, I didn't see. I didn't even see Nova listed.
Yeah, I looked and didn't see.
So I looked on IMDb, and on IMDb it says there are 191 people in the cast. And I actually literally counted, and it was something like 41 people are actually credited with roles. So that leaves about 150 people that are listed as uncredited, and including Ed Norton.
Edward Norton, there you go. If you were kind of interested in the movie, but you thought, I don't know, maybe it's going to suck, the good news is it won't, and we can both recommend that you go see it.
I thought they did a really great job with... I expected certain things to happen just from the previews, and that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And a couple points in the story, I figured, okay, this is what's going to happen next, because this is usually what happens. And it didn't.
Right.
So I thought that was really great.
I think that pretty much covers it.
I think it does.
Thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed our pre-look at Alita Battle Angel. You can find the show notes at TheOmegaBeam.com/33. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments or questions, suggestions for things you'd like to see or like us to do, please drop us a line at info@TheOmegaBeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.